Welcome to the Solo Grind, where we shine a light on the raw and real journey of being a solo entrepreneur. I am Teresa, your guide on this adventure of going it alone, without a safety net and without the rule book. The grind is real, my friend, and so are the wins, the freedom, and the joy of building success on your own terms. I'm here to debunk the myths, share some laughs, and share what it takes to thrive as a go-getter, busy, doing it all entrepreneur. Hello and welcome back. For those of you just joining in for the very first time, I am Teresa Schlup, the founder and owner of The Caffeine Creative. I've been helping confident female-based, service-based entrepreneurs build standout brands since 2011, and I love what I do. But more than that, I love helping others find the courage to take the next step on their entrepreneurial journey. And today I am super excited to welcome my second guest of the podcast ever, Emily Aborn. Emily is a copywriter, speaker, and podcast host. She lives in Temple, New Hampshire with her husband, Jason, and their snuggle-loving dog, Clyde. She enjoys hiking, reading, being a Jeopardy contestant from her couch, which I want to hear more about, and listening to podcasts like this one. Emily, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Teresa. I am beyond excited to be here.
Yes, I am so happy to have you here. And honestly, today's topic is so perfect. And I'm super excited to type into this because not according to plan is how our story kind of intertwined briefly for a little bit. And I think you were the perfect guest to talk about this because as an entrepreneur, a lot of things do not go according to plan. And we're often faced with the decisions. Do we try and see it through? Do we pivot? Do we change directions? Do we step back? And how do we do that with grace and ease? And, like I said, also our story intertwined with this. I'll let you tell the story about that.
Okay.
But just a few months ago, how we started on a path and things didn't go according to plan.
Okay. And
Yeah.
I think ironically, the name of what we were going to be collaborating on was something about the best laid plans. So there we
Yeah.
go. Okay. So Teresa and I work a lot together. I'm a copywriter. She's a website designer. So the peanut butter jelly sandwich, you can see the natural kind of go together there. So I knew that I love collaborating with you, and like you're just infectious, Teresa. You are the kind of person that I want to do business with and that I want to be around. And it's like almost no matter what we come up with together, I know it's going to be fantastic. So
Absolutely.
that was the problem. That's the problem. All right. So take that we've got that nugget. And at the same sort of time this all came into fruition, I was stopping my former podcast, She Built This. So I had two podcasts going at one time. One was interview style, which it was pretty much all interviews. I tried to make some solos eventually, but it didn't really work out. So it was pretty much all interviews. And then I do have a solo show called Content with Character. So I was stopping the She Built This podcast. And like, I don't know. I love podcasting. I love Teresa. I'm like, maybe we do a podcast together. Like maybe that's the thing. So I presented the idea, and you, of course, had this dream to do a podcast as well. And so it takes your dream and my dream and puts them together, right? So
Mhm.
that's where it kind of happened. And like it's a great idea. There's nothing wrong with the idea.
Right.
But after sitting with it for a while and just realizing, I think my capacity and also just sort of like needing to rein things in for myself a little bit and like
Mhm.
look at like I like to do like life audits. Like, okay, look at all the things you have going on right now, Emily. Can you take this on? And people should know that like you doing a podcast, that is no small feat.
No.
It's not just sit down, record, and then like boom, it goes out into the world and everybody listens to it. There's a lot of things behind the scenes involved. So
Yeah.
I knew that, and I knew kind of like what my capacity was in that. And I had to come tell you that after I had said yes, now I needed to come back and say, like, I don't think right now is the time for me.
Yeah.
Thank God you were so gracious about it. Like I think your voice, hearing your voice was so helpful. You voice memoed me back, and that was
Sure.
amazing.
Yeah.
but it doesn't feel good to tell somebody that you really like and that you really want to work
Mhm.
with that like this idea that you had together to collaborate, you're not going to be able to go through with. So that's the story.
That's the story. And and I will say too, like when you email me, I felt obligated to not obligated, but I really wanted to send that voice memo because I wanted you to hear it in my tone of voice. It's easy to type out the words like, "Hey, no worries," but I wanted you to know, like, really, no worries, because if it didn't feel right to you, pushing through meant that it wasn't going to be good. It wasn't going to be right. And we've, like you said, every time we get together and collaborate, it's pretty fantastic. And I don't want anything less than fantastic when we collaborate. So
Right.
I was really grateful that you stepped forward and you said that. But it also was a catalyst for me because I've played around with having a podcast for the last 6 years. And, those life audits that you talk about, I multiple times I had to be like, whoa, nope, I cannot devote the time to doing this because if I'm going to do it, I want to do it really well. But now I already have the time set aside. And I had some great ideas and you had some great ideas and that I built off of. And I was like, okay, I already have the time, the resources, and I'm ready to do it. So maybe it's time I do my solo podcast and see where this takes us. And so I think it worked out according to plan. We just didn't
I
know what the
know.
plan was,
I know. It's
right?
funny. Someone recently, we were planning like something local and she hadn't like she kind of I could tell was like dragging her feet on taking action towards it,
Hmm.
whereas I like of course had like the whole write up and everything ready to go.
Right.
And I could sense her hesitation, so I just was like, "Hey, maybe we need to do a meeting to talk about this event." And she was like, "You know what? I just am really overwhelmed right now. I can't do this and I think we should postpone it." And I said, "I'm so happy that you said that because like you pushing through something that doesn't feel right to you, like
Right.
that is not the energy I want to bring to a collaboration." And I don't want anyone else to bring that to a collaboration too. It's like if it's not for you, it's okay.
It's
Just
it's
say it.
okay. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
okay to pivot to take a new step in a different direction. Like
Yeah.
in the episode I record or that we did a couple weeks ago with Crystal, we pivot sometimes. Our next best step is not always the one that we planned for. And as an entrepreneur, I think it's important to give ourselves permission to go in a new direction and to stop and say, hey, I can't do that. And I think it's really important to not lock ourselves up in obligation. And I know you
Hmm.
have some examples of that because you have said like you get caught in that obligation and you push through. And tell us a little bit about how that has, I mean, like kind of kept you stuck in some areas.
Yeah. So I think when I was younger, I was telling Teresa this in the quote unquote green room. When I was younger, I had a really easy time leaving things like
Yeah.
relationships, jobs. I was just like, goodbye. It was very easy. But I think what I learned in that is like, I don't like how that makes me feel. Like, I am a person of my word and I like to be trustworthy and honest and like true to what I say I'm going to do and like loyal. I would say loyal. So
Hmm.
that didn't make me feel that way, right? It made me feel kind of like I was wishy-washy and all over the place. And I'm not saying that's what it was. I'm just saying that's how I felt when I did it.
Yeah.
So, right. So I kind of rebounded the opposite way. And suddenly I was like, I'll go down with any burning ship that I'm holding on to. Like everything became, I don't care if it's dying, I'm still going to hold on to it tightly and to my detriment. So one example I have is a business that I had, which was a lovely space. There was nothing wrong with the business. It was a community for women entrepreneurs and well loved, well participated in. Like everything looked amazing to everybody in the outside world looking in.
Hmm.
Being the person running it, it was like actually not doing very good things to my mental health. And
Sure.
so and my time commitment to like clients and just like my life overall. Like I wasn't really living my life. I was just working all of the time. And something had to give. And it was that because that was like kind of a ripple of other things. So I had to step away from that and make the decision to like let a lot of people actually like I felt like I was letting a ton of people down. I felt like I was letting myself down. I felt like I was very confused. Like, what did I like? This is something I thought I dreamed of, and this is how I feel about it, you know? So it was a very disconcerting time. It can be really hard to pivot and like to let yourself walk away from something. And
Mhm.
I'll say this, like ROI doesn't always look like numbers on a page. ROI may look like numbers on a page, but it may also look like your emotional health, your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical health. Like there are so many factors that play into these decisions. And I heard this like amazing question just recently about friendships specifically.
Mhm.
But I was like, oh my God, this could apply to anything. So it's how do I feel when I'm doing sorry, what kind of person am I being when I'm with this person? Like, do I like the kind of person that I am when I'm with this
Yes.
person? And like, that's a powerful question. Do I like the person I am when I'm XYZ? You know, when I'm on this platform, it could be something as little as making a decision to get off Facebook or Instagram because you don't like who you show up as on those
Right. Yeah.
platforms. So I loved that. And I thought that was a really good way to kind of like let yourself experience, oh, I do need to pivot from this because I don't like the person I am when I'm doing this thing.
Okay, there's so many good things that you said there that I have to that I have to touch base on. I love how you said that ROI, that return on investment, is not always numbers. And I think that's something we forget. We tend to judge our success based on the numbers, on statistics, on metrics, on bank accounts, on all of these things. And in the reality, none of that matters as much as the overall quality of life, which to me is the biggest return on investment. Am I living the life that I want to live? So I think that's super important to touch on. But also, I love how you said, who am I in this moment? Who am I in this person? And I remember thinking years ago, I mean, I know I've confessed this to you. I'm a recovering workaholic. Like I would work until I was about to drop, and then I would dig deep and find more to give, and constantly giving and giving and giving. And I remember when I was doing that, I always aligned with that metaphor of the hats, all the hats that you wear as a person. And I remember having this dream. I think it was like 30 years old, and I was like, I want to wear one hat one day. Just
Yeah.
one hat. Like I just want to be Teresa one day. And but I knew that, when I was at work, I was like, I had to be this version of Teresa. When I was at the, VP meetings and stuff in my job, I had to be a different Teresa with my team, a different Teresa, my husband, my kids, like everywhere I went, I had to be a different version of me. And I didn't feel like I could be just who I wanted to, which locked me into making obligations that I really didn't want to do, to being part of something I didn't feel good at. I mean, in that version of me, maybe it felt good for a moment, but then I had to interweave it into another part of my life. And it just became overwhelming. And I mean, talk about burnout. I had huge burnout and exhaustion. And I mean, there's so many things that went wrong. That's a
In
whole other episode.
Yeah, in addition to the energy you're expending to do all the things, you're also
Right.
expending the energy to change. Like context switching is a huge
Yes.
energy depletion.
Yes.
And I love that you talked about that, like bringing yourself we could use the word cohesion, we could use the word authenticity, alignment,
Mhm.
like any of those words work. And you're so right. Like that's how I want to feel too. So that everywhere I'm going in my life, the best part of me is coming with me because I'm choosing to be like I'm like, oh, this is actually my authentic self showing up here.
Yeah.
So not I'm reading a book right now about like parents and parenting, and one of the terms she uses is like your role self versus your authentic self. And I'm like, ooh, I want to be the authentic self, not my role self, not like
Yes.
what I think I need to be doing.
Yes, exactly. I just want to be like the best version of Teresa. So now I'm happy to say that I am who I am. And some people love me for that. Some people don't know what to think about me, and that's okay. Some people don't like it, and that's okay too. Like I really don't hold any hard or ill will towards anybody. Love me or hate me, I don't care. I'm still gonna send you love. But if you met me in the grocery store, this is who I am. If you met me at a networking event, this is who I am. Like I don't ever stress like what should I wear? What costume should I put on? What should,
Mm.
none of those things anymore. I'm just 100% me and if I want to wear, my hair in pigtails, which my daughter teases me about, or if I want to, have it in a French twist or something, whatever. I'm just who I want to be in the moment, and it's always myself. So,
And I think one of the ways people can start getting to that, because I think a lot of times you fill your life up with clutter that is not yours, or you didn't want it there, or you're
mhm.
kind of like obligated to it, right? So, one of the ways I think you can start figuring out what you do want to move towards is by getting rid of things that you don't want and you don't want to move towards. And that does take like obviously life auditing, soul searching, like some of
It does, yeah.
those moments just to yourself where it's like, is this giving me the ROI in the departments I
Mhm.
really need it to be giving me?
Yeah. And again, that I think that brings us back kind of to the topic of today, that not according to plan. How do you deal with that? When things aren't going according to plan, how do you address that? How do you deal with it? I mean, there's obviously there's different ways you can approach it. You can get angry and point fingers and blame and do all of that and be stuck. You can, you know, try to push through, or you can pivot and find a different direction. I don't, other than the name pointing or the name calling and stuff, that one's not okay. I think sometimes pushing through may be what you need to do, sometimes
Mm.
pivoting. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that. When you hit that moment of, okay, things didn't go as I expected. I had the best laid plans out there, but now things didn't work the way I thought. How do you approach that?
I think I have always been really resilient and like plucky, to use the term,
I love
like
that
I
term.
always like bounce back and I'm scrappy. I can figure anything out. So
Mhm.
I've had that going like through my life. But I'll say this with my big transition with closing the group down and stopping the podcast, I took a little bit more of an introspective approach to it and it felt really good. And I wished I had done that like the first business pivot I'd had.
Yeah.
So what I did was I treated it kind of like a grieving process. Like I really consciously made the effort to let it go. So meaning I sat down and I listed out like all of the things I was super grateful for about this. Like
Oh, I love that.
almost like I was reading its like eulogy, like I'm so grateful for this. I'm so grateful for what this brought into my life. Like, actually, I don't think I would have met you if it were not for my group.
No, no,
So
because
there's a little
Crystal
tiny,
found you.
yeah,
Yeah, Crystal found she built this and she signed up and joined the membership and all of those things you had going on. And then she pulled me into it as well. So I don't know that we would have met. Maybe,
yeah.
but who
See, like
knows?
I get teary even thinking
I
about
know.
those kind of things, but that's what I mean. So I brought in like all those parts, like all the things I'm so grateful for this,
Yeah.
and like kind of relived the moments, like like watching like the highlight reel. And then I let myself work through some of the feelings of disappointment and the feelings of anger and the feelings of frustration, like the things that actually really hurt me or harmed me, like to myself. I'm talking about
Hmm.
like my own mental health here, but just like things that I was like, okay, this is the dark side, right? And then I had to consciously like, okay, I'm taking steps now to just like release it, bless and release, right? Like let it every book comes to an end. Every chapter ends and starts a new chapter. So that like we have to remember that that's part of life. Literally it's part of life. So letting those things go is actually like really natural and means that you're like evolving and growing. So I had to like let it go, bless and release, thank it. And then here's what I have to do. And I would imagine some people listening need to do the same. Like after you feel all your feelings and sit and like wallow in it a little bit, taking your next step forward, whatever that looks like, even if it's just like I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, but I'm going to like take a course to improve a skill in some way, or like
Hmm.
reach out to a new client that I haven't been able to work with. So whatever that looks like, but taking a step forward into the new direction, I think is always helpful. And if that doesn't end up being the new direction, it's okay. Like you can always, that's information in and of itself. If you start taking a step forward and you're like, whoops, wrong step, you can keep like kind of using that time. Like that's kind of like the glob, right? When you're like in the cocoon, you're the
Hmm.
caterpillar glob in the cocoon. So it can help you to emerge as like the butterfly, whatever that you want to be, to continue the analogy.
Yeah. Well, and I love that too. And it's taking that next step. And sometimes that next step is really scary. Sometimes you feel
Mm,
like you're taking a big risk. What are people going to think? What are people going to say? Am I going to fall on my face? Am I going to all of this stuff? And for me, I don't remember where I read this. I want to say I read this in one of Louise Hay's books years ago. I mean, I've had this in my head for 20 years. But for me, when it comes to taking that next step, no matter how much fear I have, it's like it's a small step. Take it, do the best you can, and then take a pause afterwards. And so after I do anything big, I take a step back
yeah.
and be like, okay, so did that go the way I thought? How did that work out for me? And the first thing I do, like you said, is that gratitude. Like, okay, here's what went well. Like, this went well, this went well. I had courage, I did that, or whatever, I learned this or something. And then I admit, okay, maybe it didn't work the way I thought. What can I learn from this? What can I learn to fine tune and tweak and change and adjust and grow from this moment? And then I also had to personally rephrase failure because I think a lot of
Mhm.
times we get stuck in that fear of failure that we're going to fail. And honestly, even, I mean, like I joke around, I'm like, I fail all the time,
Same.
like,
And I
but
don't mind using the word failure. Like, I'm like, okay, that was not
no,
a success. It was a failure.
it was a failure. I mean, like a few months ago, I really got into making macaroons, right? And you guys maybe have seen those on Facebook if you follow me, but so I'm making these macaroons, and oh my God, were there a lot of failures. There are some that like was trying to make seashells one time for my nephew's baby shower. I wanted them to be pretty and kind of pink and blue, swirly and stuff. And they looked horribly inappropriate. Nobody ever saw those because they just did not come
Ah,
out right. And total failure. They got ground up and turned into brownies, and I moved on with life. Like I just readjusted and changed my things, and I didn't get stuck with that. And it takes practice, but I think it's a practice that's worth striving for, honestly.
one of the books I read in high school, I went to like a very small private school and we had to read some interesting choices for books, but one of them was Failing Forward. And I can tell you right now, I did not know how important that book would be for me in life, in first owning the fact that we fail and then
Yeah,
also using your failure. Like every failure I've ever had, and I'm sure you can say this too, or I shouldn't assume, but I imagine you can say this too, it like is a springboard for you for your next thing or for a new direction because you're always learning from it. Like a failure basically is a lesson, like okay, what
mhm.
happened to cause this? And sometimes it takes an outside perspective. So like if somebody for example comes to you or I and they're saying this didn't work, we're often able to give them that outside perspective like well, it's actually because this thing wasn't maybe how it should have been. So
Yeah,
that's something to remember too is a lot of people in your life want to support you through these pivots, through these transitions, through failures, and those are your people. Those are
and
the
those.
people that will be with you as you rebuild.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. This has been such a great conversation. Anything else that you want to share that you think is just incredible, valuable insight? Because I learn so much from you every time we talk. I just love it.
You're so sweet. Well, I think I would say you never know when the next thing that is either a no or a not right now is going to lead to some other possibility or opportunity. So, like Teresa now has started this podcast because of me saying no.
Yeah.
And I want to share, like, I have a client actually, which I didn't even know this was in the works for him, but he wants to start a podcast and he needed somebody like by his side helping him do it. So now, I mean, he's already like a paying client, right? So now I'm like, okay, now I'm able to give time to help him do that thing. So it's sort of like we both sort of like made space for something that we maybe
Yeah.
wouldn't have done otherwise?
Yeah. I love that. That is so awesome. So you went in a whole different direction and still in the podcasting, but through a whole new round. And that's awesome
Yeah.
because now you're helping somebody else show up and be their amazing self. And that's pretty cool. I love that.
Yeah, it and
Yes.
I never ever would have even imagined that and you wouldn't have been able to put this dream into I mean, you would have, but and not at the
But
same
not right
time
now.
most likely. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Well,
So
and
yeah,
I
you
did, I
never
will
know
say,
when a no is a possibility.
you never know when a no is a positive, actually. Sometimes it's one of the best things that you can do. And like looking back to where we were talking a few months ago, I was like, okay, I can do this with Emily, and then I'll also do my own, maybe launch it a month later. There's no way I would have had the capacity to do both. So yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have worked out in the time that I want to allot to focus on work and career and marketing and things like that, because I do like to have my personal time very protected. So it worked out beautifully.
Yeah,
Good,
agreed.
good.
So,
Okay.
and we never would be, I mean, we wouldn't be, well, we would be collaborating in a different way, but this exact conversation would not be going out into the world. And I
It would
always
not.
think that is the power of podcasting. Like the two of us coming together are creating something that has never existed ever
Yeah.
before. It's
Exactly.
amazing.
It
Yeah.
is pretty amazing. Good. Okay. So, right now, before we take off for the day, tell us about Emily, Content with Character, your podcast, whatever it is that you want to share, because I really would love for my audience to know you even better.
Thank you. You're so kind for the opportunity. So, as Teresa mentioned, I have a podcast called Content with Character, and if you're listening to Teresa's podcast, I can almost guarantee that you're going to like mine too.
Mhm.
So, it's an easy jump over. And Teresa and I do work, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, very closely together. Me as the copywriter, her as a web designer, and so if you're ready for that new website, I know that we would both love to help you. And if you need like proof in the pudding, my website is emilyaborn.com.
Which we'll put in the show notes here so people can easily find you as well. So, okay, that is it. And now, like I said, I'm going to ask you a funny question, an interesting question, because it's just to me a fun way to end the episode is to share something a little weird or goofy or different or whatever. But tell me, what is the weirdest or funniest job that you've ever had? Because you've had a lot of jobs. I know you're like me, like we've been all over the board in work.
I recounted them again this morning and I've had 41, but I think I'm missing one. I really think there's 42. But I thought long and hard about this question. And I even asked Jason, which of these is the weirdest? And he said, I think it was the pizza barn. So when I was 15, that was like I could not wait to get a job, Teresa. And I went there and I applied and I'm like, please give me a job. They paid me like $5 under the table. Done. But it was pretty weird. Like, I'm a health freak and I was making pizza. And what made me quit, honestly, was this guy asked for like extra, extra, extra mayonnaise. And when I gave him the sandwich, it was like oozing out the side. And
Oh,
then he's like, no, I still need more. And I was just like, I can't do this. I can't do this job. It makes me like actually like squeamish. So I did quit after his sandwich, not on the spot, but that was when I started thinking maybe I need to look for
this is
something else.
not the job for you. Oh, how
Yeah.
funny. Oh, I don't know that I could have done that either. Yeah.
It was a lot of mayonnaise. I'll say that. Like I like mayonnaise. Okay. Don't get me wrong, but that was too much mayonnaise.
That's too much mayonnaise. I don't know. That's awesome. I don't know if I've had a really weird or funny job. Now that I've asked you the question, I was like, what is mine? I've had a lot of jobs, but I don't know if I've I will say this. I'll have my most interesting, fun job, I will say, is I was actually a lineman for F-18 fighter jets.
Oh
So
my
I was like the
gosh.
person on the ground who would like help the pilot with the little wands, and help the pilots get the engine started and things like that. And you'd have to watch for fire and all this stuff. And there was one incident where the auxiliary power unit was like blasting out flames that were wrapping up to the tail fins of the aircraft. And like I was telling the guy, we have all these signals. So I was like telling the signal for fire, and he didn't get it. So just as I started to run to get the tanks or the fire extinguisher that we had for aircraft, he finally got it and shut off his airplane. But
Oh
that was
my
kind of terrible.
gosh.
It was kind
I
of a
see.
terrifying moment. He said he
I
didn't
can
know what I
see
was.
this for you.
Yeah, he said he didn't know what I was doing when I was giving him the signal for fire. So he actually, he was a training pilot who got grounded on that day.
Wow.
Well, which is a good thing because he didn't know
Yeah.
what fire signals were. But anyway,
Yeah.
that would be my most interesting job, I'd say.
I can see it for you though. I really can.
It was fun. It was a really
Yeah.
fun job. And I knew at the time this would probably be one of the most fun jobs I've ever had. But I also knew it was going to be a short lived one because who wants to chase fires in aircraft forever? Like, no.
Yeah. And I'd also worry about your lungs long term. So
Right.
always got to be preparing for the future.
Right. Well, just thinking of the stuff that would grind, that would get on our goggles. I imagine, I don't even want to think about what I was breathing in all that time. But so funny,
Well,
very
this
good.
was fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me, Emily. And for those of you listening, if you want to learn more about Emily, I encourage you to check out her website at emilyaborn.com. And of course, check out her podcast at Content with Character, where I myself learned so much. Emily is a wealth of knowledge and definitely somebody I consider to be on my board of directors. And I know that she can help you as well. So, thank you again for tuning in, and be sure to come back next week where I am going to share a little bit of a personal side of me and of my life and help you let go of the excuses and take charge of your success despite what life throws at you. So, be sure to tune in then. Until then, have an amazing week ahead, and I cannot wait to connect with you again. Thanks for tuning in to the Solo Grind. I hope this episode brought you some inspiration and encouragement. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, and feel free to share. For more tips and insights, visit caffeinecreative.io to check out my blog or explore the Creative Vault, my free course library. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram. I'd love to hear how this episode has helped you.